So let's just check. Now, there's no clock either, is there? I can't see it. Anyway, what time? What time's morning tea? Sorry. 11:20. That's very accurate, isn't it? Oh, very good. I thought it was something like that. So, well, this is the first time I've been to Wimala Presbytery. Thank you. You often held it clashing with other presbytery meetings. It was very strange that way. Either POSA or Generate were meeting on the same day. And then when, in the last 12 months, or a bit longer than that actually, when Sue Page and I were sharing the role, we agreed to who would get which presbyteries. And so I got two, and she's a member of Wimala, so she got the single Wimala one. Anyway, this is the first time I'm doing a presentation as General Secretary. I have actually written it out because I sometimes get the feedback that I'm more helpful when I'm following a script. Less entertaining, let me just say, but more helpful. Anyway, so thanks for the opportunity to address you this morning. As you know, I'm still rather new in the role, although not at the same time. It's a very odd experience, and I was reflecting on that with Trevor before the meeting. So what I'm going to do is talk about two topics, and then having realised that, I came up with all sorts of other things I could have talked about. So feel free to ask them. But the two things I'm going to talk about is property and mission. It's got actually a fancier name than that, but I can never remember what it is. Synod strategic property and mission something or other. Anyway, so a task group, something like that. I'm on it, and so there's a few others of you here. But it's such a I think if we'd known that, as Sue and I say, if we'd known the committee was going to last this long, we would have come up with a better name. And then the other one is I want to give a brief introduction to the initial response to the report that the review that Mission Leadership and Development Board asked for from Angel Wings at Steve and Lynn Taylor's consultancy. But I'll get to that when the time comes. So I'm going to begin with property and mission. And I should say, there have been a number of attempts to develop a strategic overview of the properties and congregations for which the Synod is responsible over the last, let's say 15 years. Let's make it 18. Anyway, quite a long time. Normally, we start with a bit of enthusiasm, and then as soon as there's any sense that we might be making any decisions, and when I say we, I've not been on all those, but as soon as there's any sense that anyone's going to be making any decisions, there's often quite strong pushback. And so they haven't persevered very long. They decided that peace is better than making decisions. But each time it happens, there is this kind of general agreement that something needs to be done, but not to us. And I think the thing is, everyone knows that we have a larger property portfolio than we really need, and we have buildings where we don't really want them. You know that, and we have new opportunities arising for mission and ministry, and we don't have the resources to put people in those places. So they're the kind of things we're wrestling with. And so in one sense, I just hope, I think this task group's done really well to last this long. And I'm hoping we're going to last a bit longer. That's the really big driving goal I've got. Let's last a bit longer. Because I think one day, and it may not be under my stewardship, but one day we're going to be forced to do this important task. Now, the current review began under the previous General Secretary, Felicity Amery, and under her leadership, and a lot of good work was done at that point. And then it got picked up by Sue Page, and as the Associate General Secretary, Governance and Operations, she kind of does the hard, gritty, tenacious work of keeping things moving along, and that's a lot of what she's doing. And the task group has varied somewhat depending on the phase of work being undertaken. And we're probably about to rejig it again. We're using the tagline, which I've got up there, missionally vibrant congregations in safe buildings that are fit for purpose. I've got to say, and Mel did a great job with her opening reflection, because she talked about CALD ministry and she talked about safe buildings. That was genius. Or the Holy Spirit, or a bit of both. Anyway, so I went to say safe buildings is quite self-explanatory, isn't it? There's a community expectation that our buildings are safe for people to enter, engage in activities in, and even walk past. Sorry, this is a distraction, but I'm going to do it anyway. There's a great line in Calvin's Institutes where he talks about, being hit by falling masonry, and it's under the section on providence. And it does remind you that, community standards have changed since 16th century Geneva. Well, I thought that was a good bit of theological reflection there, but obviously failed. I should have just kept on going. Now, many of you will remember that a few years ago, John Fong conducted a safety check on all our buildings, at least an initial safety check. As our executive officer resources said, he didn't always look at the foundations. But he did but he was very good at being able to walk into buildings and see what was safe and what was not. A report was given to all congregations. Some of that report's actually quite old now. In some cases, it's 6-7 years old, because it took him 3 years to do it. And much work has been done by congregations and church councils to meet the expectations of those reports. So for those of you who've done that work, thank you. But we still know that for some congregations there's still significant work to undertake. And so one of the things that's happening right now is that our property services team are currently following up all congregations to ascertain the current status of the report and its follow-up in the life of your congregation. It would greatly help our processes if you respond to that request for information. So that's the first thing. But so it's really obvious, isn't it? We need safe buildings. And the bill for the last, I had a slide for that. The bill for the last one was, the bill at the time of the report was significant, and as you know, building costs haven't gone down in the last few years. The second part is fit for purpose, and that reminds us that it's not enough to have safe buildings, but they should also serve the purposes of the people that are using them. Now, many of us have struggled in ministry with buildings built in an earlier era where the assumptions about the nature of worship, witness, and community were vastly different from the ones we hold now. Like the move from small porches to much larger foyers where people can gather is one example. Similarly, long, narrow preaching halls don't help the orientation to a stronger sense of being the whole people of God worshipping together. The expectations around kitchen hygiene have changed somewhat, and some of you at least have had to get industrial strength dishwashers in. So, I could talk about that subject for ages because it is fascinating, isn't it? What are the expectations around worship, witness, and service, and community that have changed, and how are our buildings helpful for that, and how do they hinder it? And I actually I'll just leave it alone. I will move on. That's what I've actually got that written here. I will move on. Now, I'm not wedded to the phrase missionally vibrant congregations. I know that the task group, of which I was not a member at the time, so you can say anything you like about the phrase and I will not be hurt, wrestled with a range of options, but it's okay. It was a very interesting exercise last year to try and develop a set of questions that were easily answered in an online survey that might help us uncover how congregations understood themselves. I know many people were unhappy with the survey, thought it was biased one way or another. I often think we get it right, by the way, when people on both sides of the theological spectrum complain, we're equal opportunity upsetters. And I'm happy to discuss what other questions we might have included. I mean, we probably need to do something similar again. And if you go, you know what, you missed this whole important area completely, I'm happy to have the conversation for a little while. When we did develop the survey, we did use worship, witness and service, because that's the phrase that appears in the basis of union, as an opening understanding, and we deliberately included community building as another category, which is part of witness and service, I understand, but we went, now because one of the things that congregations do well is intentionally serve their local communities, and so we wanted to include that in that survey. A witness, for example, also included faith sharing, but also Christian education and discipleship formation, especially how intentional are congregations about helping people move from no espoused faith into being mature disciples of Jesus. How much reflection has a church council, for example, put into how that process goes? We always like to ask, I like that question, even if nobody else does. And community building included pastoral care, activities that build relationships within the congregation and also with the wider community. And as I said, I really am willing to continue that conversation. We had a recent meeting with Presbytery leaders and we discussed other parts of this process for the coming year. And we've got another one coming up very soon to take the next step. In an ideal world, and I don't know whether we're going to get there, it would be really great in the first half of 2024 that most congregations, I mean ideally all congregations, but most congregations will do, have had a conversation about their property, their mission, and how they understand themselves. But it's a big task for a presbytery and or the synod to engage all the congregations in their midst, so we'll have modest goals and see how far we get. Now, I also need to say, it's sometimes alleged when we do these property and mission that the synod is looking to sell properties to make money. Now, I wish that our property values in South Australia were high enough that we could do that. I'm sometimes envious of my interstate colleagues when they talk about how much they're going to get from selling properties. It's not going to happen. Most of the properties we sell is more work than it's worth. I mean that because we're selling really old crossroad rural congregations, rural buildings, not congregations. It's sad that we can't sell congregations. They don't fetch much on the market. Anyway, it's a bit of a it's a furphy and a myth at the same time. That's what the intention is. Our long-term goal is for missionary, vibrant congregations in safe buildings that are fit for purpose. Now, we need to work on all three aspects of this. The safe buildings part is non-negotiable. The ramifications of serious injuries or death caused by neglect of building safety is a scary prospect. As for buildings fit for purpose, that's a slower process. And some buildings may need to be let go of simply because they're no longer useful for serving the mission of God in the world. Maybe some congregations will share properties. Our experience with church plants has reminded us that having a property can be a serious advantage. You know, there's all this talk about not being in, being free, but congregations that have to shift every month or two a service because the school they're in wants the hall for that week is seriously hard work. And as much as Rick Warren, in the purpose-driven church, makes it sound so much fun to set up and put chairs away every week, most people who do it tell you that it's simply, after a while, exhausting. So there's real advantage in having property if it serves the congregation's mission. So please participate in the process and help us to continue to move forward on this process. The second thing I want to talk about is the mission, mission resourcing. Although, sorry, that would just be a handy tagline on this. Oh, sorry, just a reminder, don't forget the safety reports. I put that there, so don't forget the safety reports. Okay, I'll go back to that for now. So you may recall that earlier this year that the Mission Leadership and Development Board commissioned a review of the missional needs of the Synod of South Australia. One of the things that prompted this is that we had there was a couple of resignations from that team, and rather than simply fill those roles again, it was thought it'd be useful to think through what were the stated missional needs within the congregation, and the decision was made to use people who had significant experience in doing that kind of review at a national level. And we actually went beyond national because we got a New Zealander to do it for us. I've got to say, that's not been an entirely helpful process for the current mission resourcing staff. It's taken a lot longer than we could have hoped. And a really long report landed in late July. And it's intended that a summary of that report will be made available to the whole church in the very near future. In fact, I heard on Wednesday that it's just around the corner. The reason why you're getting a summary, sorry? It is close, yes, I know, it's very close. I haven't got it here with me though. The report was sponsored by the MLD board. It's their report. They have shared it with the Synod Standing Committee. There are things within that report that are very specific and relate to some people's employment, and so it was felt that it was inappropriate to share that kind of information across the whole Synod. And so, and there's some things that clearly, Steve, Lynn are responding simply in part to what they're being told, and sometimes what they're told wasn't completely accurate. They were very good at checking some things, but some things still got through that weren't true, so we just went, you know what, let's put out a summary, rather than ask them to edit their report. So Tim Hine's been leading the conversation around this report for a number of months now, with a number of extended conversations at MLDB, executive officers and Synod Standing Committee. Now, some of the report relates strictly to the work of mission resourcing, like what was the best possible makeup of the team, and the possible structure and foci of that team. Other parts relate more broadly to the work of the college. Unsurprisingly, when it's written by a former principal of the college, he did ask, in what ways can the college team, in the very near future, we'll have an outstanding team of faculty at the college with the new appointments that have been made in the last 12 months. In what way can this team engage in the mission of the church? or help resource the mission of the church. And that's a really exciting possibility. And some people have read the report and said, this is the basis of a strategic plan. And in many ways, the recommendations do fit with the kind of recommendations that we were making. Now, I've got to say, there's considerable feedback to the review team about a feeling of tiredness and weariness. It's not surprising, given our experiences since 2020, the energy involved in, to use the word of the time, the pivot to ministry during COVID was huge, exacerbated by anxiety and uncertainty. And then a slow return to normal. That's if you ever got to normal. Some of the thinking is therefore around lightening the load. Tim, in summarising, speaks about, you'll be interested, Paul, gospel joy. And he quotes missiologist Leslie Newbegin, who speaks of the mission of the early church not being a burden, but beginning with an explosion of joy, which fits neatly with the moderator's theme. Paul, great minds think alike. Now, let me just give you a quick run through of the areas. So this is basic. This is kind of early thinking. None of this is set in concrete. It's firm but not set. How about that? That's obviously, if it's on a PowerPoint, it's firm. So one area is faith formation and vitality. So how to grow faith vitally in all stages of life. So it includes personal renewal, includes intergenerational, it includes helping people move beyond their comfort zone. It talks about improving preaching, enabling local education and discipleship, and also encounter and experience, not just education. So that's, because some of those phrases hide an enormous amount of work. In the same way, and not unrelated, there was a section around congregational renewal. How to lead a congregation through renewal into a new future is the way Tim summarised that. And you can see the kind of things they're talking about there. And then, as I said, I'll move through we've got a covenant come alive. So this relates to our first peoples. And if I, and may well be, I should have started with this one, how our covenant relationship can be experienced and lived into more richly. So we'd be anticipating that during the next 2 or 3 years, we'll be helping congregations broaden, deepen, and personalise their understanding of covenant relationship between the Uniting Church and the Congress, having a role in shaping reconciliation and renewal in Australia, understanding and learning from mission history, and deepening second people's understanding of first people's Christian spirituality for mutual discipleship. So, and as you all know, in the last month that's become even more important. And so then we talked about local community mission, how to do local practical mission. Now, one of the things that Steve highlighted, and it's been picked up quite a lot in the conversations, is that there's a lot of informal care done by congregations. Wendy did a great job of giving a sense of how the work of our chaplains. But there's just, so one of the things that would, so we do excellent work in this space. But one thing we could do is further train people in how to be good, caring disciples of Jesus with people they meet. How to be better listeners, how to respond, how to know your limits. There's a debate about this language, but in the report it talked about congregations being a chaplain to their neighbourhood. Personally, I think it makes sense. That, there's a sense in which being a caring pastoral presence to your whole community is part of our call. But also then talking about partnering with formal care, and that can include chaplaincy, but it also might include our organisations. And then related to that is evangelism, how to effectively proclaim the gospel with modern people, public theology, which of course, as you know, includes social justice. It's, sorry, you might not know that, that's one of the ways that term is used. Empower every Christian to articulate faith, and how community action and evangelism interweave. And then finally, and this is, I mean, you probably don't need much on this because Paul's done an excellent job of talking about this, but, and it's also related to the Congress conversation, is how do we develop intercultural capacity for our congregations? And that's partly about multiculturalism, but it's also partly about understanding secularisation and the environment in which we find ourselves. So I think I got through that quite quickly, and it's not the final say on it, and I think Tim is hoping in the near future to be able to do a much bigger, brighter presentation on these things. But hopefully that's giving you a sense then of some of the key areas. So property and mission, and then the mission report, and they're the things that are taking up my time at the moment. Thank you, Trevor.
Thanks, Philip. Good job, right on time.
Well, unless somebody's got questions over morning tea.
I will. We have one question. I was just going to comment. There's a number of questions, which I will allow for in a second. I will just say that a lot of what Philip has been talking about is addressed in various reports, and whilst we will open it up for one or two short questions now, be mindful that a lot of what he may be responding to will be coming out in those reports, and so may not be directly able to address it at the moment. I saw a number of yellow cards. There's a microphone at the back if you'd like to go and stand there, and that's so the people participating in Zoom can hear what you're asking.
I'm not sure about Bill, he's holding up a blue card.
Yeah, we did warn about 2 cards at a time. Tony.
Two questions, if I may. The first, with the mission and planning, strategic, whatever. We're endeavouring to be involved. My question is it being driven by Synod and incapacitated by others, or who's in charge of what's going on? Because it's taking a lot of time to get nowhere at the moment. My second comment is...
So that was an affirmation, Tony, just checking?
Sorry?
Were you affirming the process?
I think the process is great,
good to hear
but when's it going to happen?
It's happening, and it's a collaboration between the Presbytery and the Presbyteries and the Synod, and some of the Presbyteries are starting a long way back. I mean, and that's not an insult. I'm just saying, you know, the Synod's been working on this. Well, some people in the Synod have been working on this for a long time. The Presbyteries are coming to this new. They've got to pick up a whole lot of information, but we're getting there. But and I said, we've got a meeting this week that will push things through a bit. Fingers crossed.
I'll hold my breath once.
Good.
My other comment is to do with the mission and the local mission. I query whether we really need training. I think we need encouragement of those with gifts to use those gifts in the community. You can train all you like. I can nearly quote you people with pieces of paper that would be safer left in the office than out in the community.
Well, there's some truth to that. Often action is what churches, often we're well trained but don't act. But at the same time, we never stop learning, do we? And we're lifelong learners. That's what it means to be a disciple. So I'm always happy to participate in an educational experience, and I'm pretty sure others of you are as well.
Phil, Dave Walker from Athelston Congregation. Just an observation that the statement earlier, missionally vibrant, safe buildings, fit for purpose. Fit for purpose, are we talking about the buildings or the congregations?
Good work, Dave. I might bring you with me for next time. That's a great line.
Let's start with the buildings and we'll go from there.
Yes, Philip, I think my question is probably one for next time as well. I'm aware that there's a lot of reports coming out and a lot of discussion going on at all levels of the church, but amongst them there is a whole lot of questions about the whole property issue, which are not included in the report that you gave. And there's also significant questions about the governance of the church, and one that I think you could possibly assist us with at some time is to define for us what do you see as the responsibilities of Synod vis-a-vis the responsibilities of the Presbytery.
Well, you missed an excellent lecture that I did a few weeks ago at the college on that. And the other thing is that Linda Driver, who is one of the, and Paul Goes the other one, we have two representatives of the Act 2 committee at the moment talking about reports and papers, and they'll be, I think Linda's doing a presentation later so she'll talk about governance for you.